This is United We Strike Radio on the International Community Radio Network. Don't buy, don't comply, ask why. UnitedWeStrike.com radio.
Yeah.
Stoke-on-Trent.
Yeah, hello. This is Detlev Wake News Radio, and with his ICR Radio networks and UWS networks radio here live on this specific topic of the riots in Great Britain. And I'm here broadcasting from Switzerland, but our main guests and our guests here, which you will further listen to, are from the UK. So why don't you, Alin, take over here from here and take us into the next hour?
I think he's still making tea.
Oh, that's
sorry.
Why don't
Hello.
you take over?
Hello.
Yeah, here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Everybody's
check.
live.
2, 3.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was going backwards and forwards because we'll make tea properly, you see. Got to warm the teapot and all the rest of it. Go through the ritual.
Well, that's very British, isn't it? And on the other hand, talking from Switzerland, gentlemen, what you are talking about, what you were talking about the last 2 hours, is exactly what is happening all over here in other countries as well. So whether you go to Germany, whether you go to Switzerland, Austria, or any other country, it's all the same. So please go on.
We live in interesting times.
Yeah, can I say something? I think the answer to the problem is knowledge. Knowledge is a weapon. And I think that certainly I know Brian has a considerable amount of knowledge. I think I do. And I think we need to impart that knowledge in order that people can gain from that and then learn how to fight back. I've actually just written a book on the English Constitution and the crimes committed against it by government, which are getting quite good reviews, actually. But I think the object that we have to do, and one of the things we have to do, and it's very difficult because the mainstream media will not come on board with this, is we have to educate the population as to what is going on. I mean, not just in this country, but around the world. We have to educate them as to what is going on and what they can do about it. And I think that these things are extraordinarily important, but extremely difficult to get out. Brian's doing sterling work with his paper and his website, and he's reaching many, many thousands of people on a regular basis. And that's imparting a great deal of knowledge, and you can see that by the groups that are getting together to take on various aspects. And if you look at the internet, there are an increasing number of groups, and these groups are becoming increasingly more volatile. So if government think that they've had a hard time with the riots we've just had, that they ain't seen nothing yet, because a lot of the people who are talking about going out and taking over the country are actually people who have military training in parachute regiments, special forces, that sort of thing. And believe me, even armed police officers will not, in fact, stand a snowball's chance in hell of dealing with them. So basically, our job is to educate people, preferably into doing what the British Constitution group are calling lawful rebellion, but preferably by doing it through peaceful means. And that means instigating the law of the country and making sure that the police and the courts actually uphold the law the way it's written.
Yes.
I think what we've got...
Brian, you've said before that the anger out there, and it's not just about these young people who are disenfranchised, and I think that when they look toward consciously think forward into the future, they're very anxious, and they're bound to be, because it's just a black void. They're all getting into debt for their studying, and there's nothing at the other end of it because of these European Eugenics Union, I call it, policies that's taken all the industries, as we were talking about earlier on, to other foreign countries. There's no jobs here. So, but it's not just that. It's not just the youngsters. Okay, I think right across the board, people are angry. And Brian, you've said it on that clip we did together. They are angry, and they want to take drastic measures, violent measures too. What do you have to say about that? We don't think there's any need for any violence whatsoever.
Well, I am always saying, and I said it on a radio show that I know was broadcast over some of the areas in London that had the problems, that we don't need violence, and there's a number of reasons why. But one of the key ones is that the other side that's trying to build a dictatorship, it wants violence, because violence on the street, it's geared up to deal with that. It wants to bring in the police, it wants to bring in the water cannons, it wants to bring in curfews.
I think it is your opinion, Brian. I think you think that this was a false flag, stand down type of style operation. All of this rioting, it was to a large degree, it was engineered and so on to initiate problem, reaction, solution. As Detlev was saying earlier on. What are they hoping to achieve out of this? What do we each of us think? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to gain out of this? Like Tony said earlier on, who benefits? It's always follow the money. Who benefits? There's lots of sensible questions we can ask, and hope when you ask a good question, you get a good answer.
Well, who benefits? I'm quite sure that the people we're up against are a very special breed of people because they're different to most ordinary people. I believe that if we look at the ministers we have in Britain at the moment, the people who are holding the power and the people behind them, they're absolutely cold and callous. I believe that we are looking at
psychopathic,
sociopaths and psychopaths, and I'm going to say that I've always been fascinated, not in an unpleasant way, but just curious as to how Germany as a nation could have been taken over by such a foul regime under Hitler. How did that happen? How did ordinary German people who would have been working in factories or farming or fishing or going about their lives, how did they become embroiled in such a horrible regime? And I'm going to say initially I was naive enough to believe that it was something to do with nationality. But in Britain at the moment, you can absolutely see this beast trying to build itself here. And the people who are doing it, if you ask what their motivation is, it's absolute basics. It's greed, it's power. It's a sadistic nature. It's the fact they are psychopaths. They don't even think as we do. So that's what it's about. I know for some people this is a little bit scary and they don't want to go here. But one of the problems we have in Britain is that we haven't experienced this sort of regime in our country. But if we talk to people who've lived in the Soviet Union or people who've lived in Germany or East Germany, or even China or Korea, they have lived under these incredibly unpleasant, vicious dictatorships. And that is what we are seeing grow in UK at the moment, unless we do something about it.
Collapse. It feels like it's collapsing into dystopia, frankly. But these politicians, I mean, they Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Cameron, Clegg, every time he comes on the television, half the nation reaches for their sick bag. Like once you get on the aeroplane, every time he opens his mouth or you see him, they make the mafia look like a bunch of Boy Scouts, Tony. What do you think, Tone?
Well, I think we've got to stand back and analyse just exactly what happened within the riots. And I think that's interesting, because I think we've got a rioting. What we had here was not rebellion directly against the government here. What we had was a rioting underclass. This is a product of a diseased culture, basically. It was something like as Paul Joseph Watson said this morning, it's something from a bad zombie movie where, these people had probably been fed on a diet of putrid, immoral football stars and pop stars, and it's bling, bling, bling. And interestingly, what they were targeting was they weren't going for by and large, for police stations or for government officials. They were going for material possessions, the latest iPod, and breaking into those shops by and large. And what the effect of that was to get the middle classes to look at this criminality and condemn it, and then turn themselves round to the government and clamour for solutions to this level of criminality. But in that process, they're taking their eye off of the real government corruption. And I think that's deliberate. And that's why I think you can easily see and stand back and say, in all probability, this was engineered as a false flag. Why would the police stood down for the early start, the early parts of this? We have reports in Leicester that there were agent provocateurs who were paying money for youngsters to actually start a riot. Now, if that's the case, we need to investigate that and find out really if that was the case, because that's potentially damning evidence and would be consistent with the Hegelian dialectic, the create a problem, we get the solution, clamour for the solution, and the solution is brought in by the government in draconian measures, and it's playing into their field. What we haven't yet got is the middle classes turning round and rebelling directly in an educated way, en masse, against the government. And what the government have perhaps successfully done with this operation is turn the middle classes back to facing this underclass and this rioting that we've had, which I don't think is directly aimed at the government themselves. It's aimed at just a collection of material things, and almost a gay abandon of disorder, but not sufficiently channeled. And I think the middle classes need to be alert, and the educated middle classes need to turn their attention on where the corruption really lies, and that's the challenge for us.
So that is actually a revolt, more or less, not a revolution as such. Is that correct, Tony?
Well, everything's got. What we need is everything needs to be peaceful, and we can't condone for one moment what's happened. But I think what seems to be the case is that if you look at the mainstream media and the comments that people are making on the mainstream media, they are due because all their attention is diverted to what we're going to do about this underclass, and few people are actually then, other than this alternative media type program, are pinpointing what else needs to be done, which is to put right and identify and highlight the corruption in high places and the reasons for that corruption. And I still think that the masses in Britain are not awake yet. The massive amount of people in our public services are not awake to this yet. So we've got a massive job to do for education in order to heighten the awareness before things change.
That's why we will make a YouTube of that as well. Though there are 3 hours, so we have to split it up to make it more, easy to listen to. Well, anyways, yeah. So, and Albert, what's your opinion?
Why? I'm on the radio.
Yeah. So, do you see that the same way, or?
Shall I assist? I think Albert's talking another conversation.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, please, why don't you step in, Brian?
Well, I agree with what Tony said, absolutely. One of the things that I've noticed is that the BBC has worked particularly hard to try and ramp up the trouble. And there were some amazing interviews that one of the BBC reporters was doing in the last 24 hours, where they were questioning coloured people. Well, the man was black, he was West Indian, and the BBC reporter was desperately trying to get him to say that the trouble had a racial element to it. And in the end, he got so annoyed with the BBC reporter that it was a lady. He said to her, "Are you trying to say that I'm involved with rioting because I'm black?" And we've seen across the country, when obviously in Britain there are little clips from local radio stations and news stations which viewers overseas won't see. But in those little clips, many of the people of all sorts of different backgrounds. They were white or black, or they were Muslim, or they were Christian, or they were something else. They were all sticking together and saying, we don't know why this happened in our community, but it's not to do with race. And this was absolutely wonderful for me, because
I'm boiling alive in here. What's the matter?
One of the things that was being done, or one of the things that the British government would like to do, is to stir up massive violence between Christians and Muslims, or Scots, or the Welsh, or the English. And yet these ordinary people were being very defiant to the BBC and saying, no, there isn't a problem between us as people. This is something else that's happening. And the BBC, I've got to say, as an Englishman, I absolutely hate the BBC, because it has this reputation overseas that the BBC tells the truth. If you hear it on BBC International News, it's true. And every day when I dig into BBC reporting, I find nothing but government propaganda and lies. The BBC is one of the most dangerous broadcasting agencies in the world, in my opinion. And I'd like to apologise on behalf of all of us here in UK that people in Germany or Switzerland or France or America have to listen to the sheer propaganda that comes out of the BBC.
Yeah, there's even, I think Russian TV now is even better than than anything else.
Absolutely. Right. I must say, I do absolutely concur with Brian. They're trying to create a sort of a media hysteria over all of these events over the last week. And it's obvious to me that this is a mind control style psychological operation in some way. It feels that way to me anyway. And I asked earlier on, what are they trying to get out of this? How are they trying to benefit from all of this? And yes, they always use that classic, divide and rule sort of tactic. They've been doing it for thousands of years. It's a control system. They have absolutely everything to lose. They've got to keep the control system protected and intact and so on. And as we all sort of study this subject, and yes, Brian's right, they're psychopathic. They have no heart whatsoever. They have no empathy. They are quite willing to kill, it seems, in order to get their way, and that's why we see what we see,
But I think from their point of view, we are just slaves. We are not even human. We're not even animals.
I think that what we see is a reflection of them, in a sense, that the more paranoid and threatened they feel, the more likely they are, I think, to try to attack the people, the masses, with these operations and, these mind control and the media, using the media, hyping things up and so on. Because we know that they wrote in their own documents, they need to take control of the media. They need to take control of the politicians, the political. They need to take control of the money, the banking. We've talked about these subjects. But yes, the media as well. And it's very, 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 look at 9/11. I mean, look at all of these events that occur. And
Oslo is the same thing. It was a false flag.
Absolutely, yeah. Just observe it, sort of like objectively, and you look at it. It's an interesting picture, and I think many of us have said this before. Truth is stranger than fiction. I mean, it really is.
Well, it's actually it's only 6,000 people who are ruling the world.
Absolutely. It's just a cabal, actually.
6,000. You can't even make it a percentage of the whole world population.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's just a few of them, and just but they've relied on this mind control, sort of magical, sort of like illusionist sort of tricks. They've got a very strange, weird Illuminati religion that they're fanatical about. And that involves what Albert was talking about earlier on, destroying the mainstream religions, destroying the society by getting everyone to fight amongst each other. Right. It could be young people, youth, a teenage rampage, and that's young people versus middle-aged and old people, and it's black versus white. And as Brian was identifying, yes, they get everyone to fight amongst each other as they slip out the back door with all the money, with all the loot.
Yeah, and Brian,
are criminals.
Brian, I was, yeah, but you know, we always, yeah, absolutely. But you know, we are looking at what can we do, and I was so impressed by Brian.
Yeah.
Or
Can
Albert.
I come in here?
Yeah.
Can I come in here? Yeah, right. Brian produces a very good newspaper called the UK Column, which contains an awful lot of information. If you read the UK Column, you'll see exactly what is going wrong. Brian deals with common purpose. So what you can do in whatever country in the world you're in, if you have common purpose, you just put freedom of information requests in for common purpose information, and then you send them back to a central place in your own country. If that's the United Kingdom, you send it to Brian. He will then correlate all the information. Information is a weapon. And the UK Column is an excellent tool for disseminating that. I've written a book. It's called A Layman's Guide to the English Constitution. It's now been given an ISBN number, so you can get it from a bookshop. I'm not taking any profit out of this at all. I have said from day one, I will not, even if the thing is a bestseller and sells millions of copies, which is highly unlikely, I don't want anything out of it. I want the money ploughed back into the fight. So if you buy the book, then you can, in fact, find out where it has gone wrong in this country and how it has gone wrong. And it also tells you what to do, basically, which crimes have been committed. And if you then contact us on the website that's given on the back, we'll tell you exactly what to do about dealing with the crime that's been committed. You know, just about every crime that's been committed in the last 45 years in this country, it has been committed, major crime that is, been committed by government. And just about every one of them has been either sedition or treason, which are major offences against the state. So we have to get people to fight back. So, you know, before we go off air, if people want to grab a pencil
yes,
and paper,
I was going to suggest that
I'll
as well,
give you
Al,
the title of the book and the ISBN number. And then
I was going to suggest that, Al, but we all give out our websites, UK Column and so on, and your one as well. I was going to say that, but I don't know how much time we've got. On
4 minutes,
the show.
but it looks on my watch.
Well, no. Well, we would have if you have time until the top of the hour. So that would be half an hour, about. But if that would be you know, to wrap everything up and explain to everybody, unless somebody of you has to leave this conversation, then you know, we can make it up.
No, not at all. I'm really enjoying it. And I think that perhaps what the listeners would like to hear are some solutions.
Right.
So we could run through some of those as well, you know.
And everybody can actually, one after the other, say his thoughts of solutions.
We starting with you, Brian?
Okay, well, the key bit's already come out. This is an information war. The other side has a plan, and that plan has been designed to work covertly, and that is that people can't see it. So they've been working away at this plan, not just in recent years, but for hundreds of years, except now it's coming together and accelerating. But the plan was always designed to be hidden from people. Now we can see the plan. The other side has got a big problem. The only thing they can do is more of the plan faster. And that is why at the moment it's becoming more and more obvious to see that something's wrong, and the fact that the government is making decisions which are not in our best interest. They're actually hostile to the people. So the first weapon we have is to get out there and tell other people about what you know. And when you do that, two things will happen. One is some people will run away from you. They don't want to hear. They think it's scary. It frightens them. And you will find that they put up a wall. And other people are fewer in number, but other people do want to hear what you have to say. And those are the people you should concentrate on. Now, I found life very difficult. If I go back even 6 months ago, we were trying to get the truth out along with a lot of other people right the way across the world. It was very difficult. It was like pushing a very big stone. In recent months, there's been a huge change. More and more people know something's wrong and they want answers. They say to you, tell us what's happening. And when you tell them, they ask even more questions. Now, I believe that the truth is beginning to spread, and that is why the British government and the people in Europe that are trying to put this new world order together, and the same in America, they are beginning to panic because they know that ordinary people are waking up to what is happening. And as we've just heard, there is very, very few of them. I can easily believe that 6,000 people are orchestrating this. So in Britain, we're not faced with hundreds of thousands of bad guys. We're only faced with a few hundred, and there are millions of us, so we can easily deal with this. But the key is to get the truth out. And if somebody says to me, how are we going to clean up the National Health Service? How are we going to clean up the courts? How are we going to clean up the police? The answer for me is very simple, because the good people, the honest people who are in the police, who are in the National Health Service, who are in schools, even in government, there are good people. We've got to give them the courage to stand forward and do what they need to do, which is clean up the mess. And I think it's absolutely brilliant that in UK, over recent months, we've had more and more policemen and women who are now starting to come forward. They're whistleblowing, they're giving information about what's happening, but they're also telling us that within the police force, more and more policemen and women are saying, no, we're not having this, and they are starting to stand up against the establishment. So this is a pattern which can be repeated in other countries. Instead of everybody trying to attack the government, the key thing is to get in amongst the ordinary organisations and wake people up. And of course, we can do this in a peaceful way, which means we give the government less opportunity to clamp down as a police state. So that's my take, that's my idea on how we should deal with this situation.
Well, Brian, why don't you just give out your websites and how people can contact you? Okay.
Well, the main website is connected with the paper that we produce, which is the UK column, and the web address is www.ukcolumn. I'll spell that. It's COLUMN, and then it's .org, O-R-G, ukcolumn.org. If you go to that site, on the top bar, you will find several other websites, which include the British Constitution Group, Lawful Rebellion, and also the specific website where we're talking about this organisation, Common Purpose. So please visit the UK column. If you'd like to speak to me, you can send me an email through the site to the editor at UK column.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Brian. And people, keep in mind, I mean, I'm talking here from Switzerland, but I think Brian, he's been a former officer in the Navy, I guess, in the British Navy. So, people are waking up all over the place. So, try to contact him. So, Alin, why don't you take over?
Yes, hi. Well, I would, about myself, that's really not important. I mean, what I can say, what is at stake here with all of this? Okay, I'll tell you what's at stake. Our very sovereignty is at stake here, our national sovereignty, and that is a divine thing, a divine sovereignty. But it's not just the nation, it's also our individual sovereignty that's at stake with all of this. Now, I know Brian and Albert, and these are not just associates or colleagues. You know what I mean? These are also my friends, and I know their character. And they are brave patriots here, and they're doing the right thing. And I've joined in with that. We are educating the people. We're trying to tell the people what's going on, and so on. I think that also the government. What is government? Okay, I mean, in our lives, we spend more money on government than anything else. Okay, but what does government produce? It produces nothing. In fact, we can see from recent events, government actually produces complete chaos and complete dystopia. Actually, it's we the people, the middle class, the working class, the middle class people and the richer people. We're the people who we produce things, not the government. And I think it's all really, really gone doolally, that means it's all gone upside down.
Yeah.
And I think further this, that we're talking about nation states, the sovereignty, the divine sovereignty of nation states, because it's obvious to me, and anyone who puts 2 and 2 equals 4, you see, the government says 2 and 2 equals 5. And then we turn around and say, wait a minute, no, 2 and 2 equals 4. And they believe their own lies, even. I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's so Orwellian. It is doublespeak and so on. I mean, they think that they can throw magic tricks at us, but not all of us are fooled. But I think that each of us, if we all do our very best in our personal relationships, for example, be a good son, be a good daughter, be a good father, be a good parent or mother, be a good brother or a sister, be a good friend, and then so on, and do your best. If we all do our best, and I've said this before, the writing is on the wall. These people cannot win because there's so many more of us, and if we do our best, it's all over.
Absolutely. Also, if you keep in mind that's only a few people, only
that's where it's heading.
6,000 people. Oh dear, Alin, thanks a lot. Why don't you just give us your website again and how people can contact you?
Certainly, it's www.englishrivieraproductions, one word. EnglishRivieraProductions.co.uk. And you can also email us through info@EnglishRivieraProductions. But anybody who comes to the website is welcome. And you can listen to some music and so on.
Yeah, but you have a band as well. I mean, you do make music. Can you say something to that as well?
No, it's not about that. I mean, this is about
of course,
going
but
on with riots and that.
Yeah, sure, but just to get in.
That's not important, really. We are in a pickle, and I think that we've got to take some sacrifices. But yes, with all this work that we're doing, I think it's fantastic what Brian does, what Albert does, and we welcome Tony as a brother here. And because, like I said, we know what's at stake here. And we're going to have to take action, because if we just stand around and do sod all, then what will happen is, well...
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
It's as simple as that. And I suggest we do our very best.
Oh, absolutely.
And if we do that, I think that is the key. Because the big secret is what we are. They always tell us that we're just this animal. No, we're multidimensional and so on. So there's a lot of spiritual dimensions to this and all the rest of it. And there's a lot of people that are far more... qualified than I am to discuss such matters. But, I think the key is to do your very, very best, whatever you happen to do, French polishing or tinkering around with guitars or whatever,
Sure. We have to take whatever we can.
Little small things add up to big things, I think. I think, Brian, you'd agree with that. But what do we reckon out Albert? Albert's got a website as well.
Yeah, why don't we switch over to Albert then? Albert, why don't you say something?
Yeah, well, the website, I mean, basically, let me tell you about me. I'm a French polisher by trade. I do antique restoration, but I was a part-time policeman, and somebody gave me some documents released under the 30-year rule and said to me, these are historical interest. Well, I like history, so I started reading with my historian's hat on. And before I'd gone too far, I was thinking to myself, my God, this is sedition, and I was wearing my policeman's hat. The unfortunate thing is, of course, that I'd retired from the police force by then. So I've been fighting this ever since by trying to get policemen who are still policemen to actually bring prosecutions against the survivors of the Heath government for high treason. And that's where I'm going. Now, in order to do that, I've got a website, which is www.acasefortreason, that's all one word, .org.uk. And I've written a book, which is called A Layman's Guide to the English Constitution, and it's by me, Albert Burgess, and its ISBN number is ISBN 978-0-9569815-1-6. That's the deluxe version. There is a cheaper version, which is ISBN 978-0-9569815-0-9. I don't know what they're going for in the shops, but they're not that dear. It's only 32 pages. It's very easy to read. It's written so that a child could read it and understand it. And in fact, children have read it and understood it. And as I say, it explains exactly where in England the Constitution has been suborned and subverted in order to allow this to happen in period. Anybody can go onto the website, and there's a lot of information on there. And I have absolutely no objections to people contacting me. My email address and the website address are on the back of the book, which you can, as I say, order from the bookshop. It's published by an internet publishing company called Lulu. You can look them up and order it directly from them. But that's about it, really, for me.
So he's an author now, you see. He's French polishing, policing, and now authoring. He's a man of many talents. I bet you're a good gardener as well, Albert, and I know you like a bit of fishing.
Right.
We'll have to do that sometime. You chaps will have to show me how to do it, because I'm not done it a few times, but I'm not terribly.
So we're going to Tony now.
Okay, then. I want to just tell you very briefly something that's happened since I've joined the fight. And I see this as a fight simply between a battle between good and evil. And if you take religion as one example, and we've mentioned that I think the New World Order want to divide, they want to pit Islam, Muslim people against Christians, etc., under what they probably have as an entirely different ideology, which is satanic in many instances. But during the course of my particular campaign, and bear in mind I had a belief and I stood up against what I saw as lies behind 7/7 and 9/11, my campaign campaign for justice through the Employment Tribunal has taken off. And it's been a humbling experience and a blessing in one sense, because it's brought me in contact as a Christian with many Muslim people. And I was very surprised at the extent to which Muslims are blinded at the moment to the notion of the injustices of our government, that I believe have a policy through the false flag operations of 9/11 and 7/7, and the measures that have been brought in on the war and terror, and the draconian legislation, terrorist legislation that's in, to demonize the Muslims in our country. And when Christians and other people stand up for the Muslims in that sense, upon seeing injustice, then the Muslim people start to trust and embrace what's happened. They need educating, and we need that trust to be built up. So really an appeal for everybody that when they see evil, confront it, challenge it, go in where it hurts, but going peacefully and with love and kindness. And if we look at perhaps Edmund, go back to Edmund rather than quote any scripture. If we look at Edmund Burke, and he said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And the call right across the country is for good men and women, and even children, to when they see evil, be prepared to confront it, because we have got evil in our midst. I haven't got a website, but I will have one to track the employment case within a couple of weeks. And I think on that note, that's all I really wanted to say. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. That was well said. and getting all the information together from everybody, I mean, it's impressing. And
we'll get you up and running with a website, Tony.
Yeah, sure. We have to.
I just noticed. I just noticed the what you call it, the SMS thing. Has Brian left us then?
I think he has. Yes.
Yeah. He had to leave. But he sends his regards and wishes us all well. And we have to fight. No, we have to fight. It's an information war.
I actually agree with Tony. I think this is a fight between good and evil, and I think that it's a lot of the stuff that's going on in origin. It wasn't so very long ago that the law in this country made witchcraft a crime. That was in fact rejected, and now we have, going across the whole country, we have a build-up of witchcraft and of paganism, whereas before it was Christian. So we seem to be going backwards, really, rather than forwards. As far as that, it is entirely down to the actions of government, who have sold this country out. Edward Heath was paid for selling England to European Economic Community. He was paid £60,000 in 1973. They called it the Charlemagne Prize, which was for the greatest European politician for the year. Rubbish. He was being we're told, and there are people who track this, that Tony Blair, when he signed the first part of the Lisbon Treaty, was paid 175 million euros, with another 175 million to follow on when he completed the signing. But he actually left office before then, so Gordon Brown signed the other half. Presumably he got the other bit of the money. I don't know, but presumably he did. Paid, we're told, to Tony Blair through a Swiss bank, the Credit Suisse bank, through a bank in Belize. There are people who track money. I don't. It's not something that interests me, money. I've either got it, in which case my wife steals it and goes on holiday, or I haven't got it, in which case she stays at home and complains.
That's a good one, yes.
So, but I dare say all us. But I mean, basically, money doesn't interest me at all. As I say, I'm not taking not a penny out of the book. What I've said is that any profits from the book are either to be ploughed back into the campaign or into Help for Heroes, one or the other. But I don't want it. And when the guy said to me, well, what if it's a major bestseller and it sells millions and you could be rich? What then? And my wife.
Your missus would nickel your royalties.
Yeah. I said, just don't tell my wife.
Well, you're doing the cabinet in your workshop. Yeah. She runs off with all the royalties.
Well, yeah, absolutely. My wife hates what I do. She's convinced we're all going to get machine gunned in our beds at night. And I tell her that, if she really believes that to be the case, then we really have to fight against it, because you can't have a government that you're frightened is going to shoot you in your beds at night. But I think that our politicians, to a man, are corrupt. And I think our police force, in fact, are not prepared to uphold the law. In fact, one of our government ministers, David Davis, is actually a special constable. And he in fact was on television tonight showing his warrant card, and he and I had a communication on the internet, and he said, well, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to go into Parliament and arrest all 650 members of Parliament? And I said, well, yes, exactly, that's what I want you to do. And he said to me, well, what would my custody sergeant say if I walked in with 650 people under arrest? And I said to him, well, frankly, I couldn't care less what my country custody sergeant thinks about what I do. All I know is if I arrest somebody, I've arrested them for a crime and I can justify it. You can justify the arrest of all of our members of Parliament on the grounds of their treason. You know, what the custody sergeant thinks about it is irrelevant. But he won't go out and arrest any members of Parliament, which makes me think that he's a very poor policeman, really. But there you go.
Yeah, that's actually a shame, isn't it?
Sorry, I was going to just ask Albert, because he mentioned Tony Blair there. What was that law he changed, Albert? It's something to do with treason.
The what?
Something to do with treason. The first thing Tony Blair did was change...
Well, Tony Blair, in fact, he repealed 3 treason laws, one of which was the 1795 Treason Act, which makes it an offence of high treason to restrain the Queen. Now, I can't see any reason why you would repeal a Treason Act, which is specifically there to protect the Queen. Unless, of course, you intend to do something to the Queen that will otherwise be treason. It doesn't matter, because the 1351 Treason Act is still there, so they can't touch the Queen anyway. But, I mean, he also repealed some other laws, and then he asked Lord Goldsmith to repeal even more treason laws. And I contacted the Law Commission, who recommend these repeals. They look at the laws and they recommend them. And I pointed out to them that Parliament can pass any laws they like to protect the sovereign and constitution of this country, but once they pass them, they become, in fact, constitutional in their own right and are protected by the Constitution. And that any attempt to repeal one of them is, in fact, an act of treason in its own right, because it weakens the defences around the Constitution and the sovereign and places them at risk. They emailed me back by return to say, of course, we don't repeal them. We only recommend the repeal. So I then came back to them and I said to them, look, if you recommend the repeal of a treason law, that constitutes in law a conspiracy with others to commit treason by removing the protections from the sovereign and constitution and placing them at grave risk. I and a number of colleagues of mine would be only too happy to walk into police stations and make the allegation that officers of the Law Commission are in fact conspiring with others to commit treason. And I then said to them, I don't know you. I am not sleeping with your sister. If you want to spend the rest of your life in prison, I really don't care. You recommend the repeal of another treason law, and I am going to do my damnedest to see that's exactly where you spend the rest of your life. And my damnedest is very good. And it took 3 weeks for them to come back from that, and you could guarantee they'd spoken to everybody in the country worth talking to, and they'd looked in every book they could find, and they came back and they said, we have no plans to look at the treason laws. And I recently asked them if they would notify me of any laws that they are planning to put up for repeal, on the grounds that I would like to be able to advance an argument as to why we should keep these laws. Because they have repealed some very good laws. For example, they repealed in 1948 under the Criminal Law Revision Act an Act of 1351 called the Act of Provisors. This made it an offence of treason to sell any English asset to a foreign owner. Now, by repealing that, they've left the way clear for these super international companies to come in, like the Dutch with British Steel. They buy it up, then they shut it down, and they move all production back to Holland. The net result is we can't make steel because we don't have the capacity to do it anymore because it's been shut down. And we're losing the knowledge of how to make it because we're losing the skill base. Now, in 1967, in the Criminal Law Act of 1967, they actually repealed the Act of Provisors, Praemunire. That's Praemunire, which was of 1351, and that made it a criminal offence of high treason to actually put any foreign law into England and to allow any of His Majesty's subjects, because we're talking about Edward III here, to be drawn out of England to be tried in foreign courts. So now we have the European arrest warrant, and we are getting, well, on the day we joined the EEC, we took 2,000 laws on that we didn't want, didn't need, and really don't have any place in this country. But we took them on that day, and we've been adding to them at a rate of hundreds every day. So we've made, over the last 35 years, we've had more law put on our statute books from Europe than we made for ourselves in the previous 700 years. So basically... and that's from both Labour
and Conservative governments, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, the Law Commission wrote back to me and gave me their website address so I can look up these laws myself they're talking about repealing. But they made the point again, we are not looking at any treason laws. So I think we can say that one person can make a difference, even if it's a local difference. I mean, for example, I went up my local town hall, was walking past it, and I saw that they had the Union flag up and they had the European flag up. So I walked into the town hall and I said to the people in the town hall, get that rag off of there. And I'm probably going to get myself arrested for a European arrest warrant now, Alin. But I said, get that rag off of there. It has no place here. And lo and behold, they took it down. Then they put up 2 Union flags, which were wrapped round the flagpole in the wind, and they weren't properly pulled up to the top. So I went back in and I said, look, this is our national flag. It should be worn with pride. It should, A, be pulled to the top of the flagpole, and B, it shouldn't be allowed to wrap itself round. So next time I went up there, they were pulled up to the top of the flagpole. They put a little eyelet in the bottom end of the flag and tied the bottom end of the flag down to the wall so that they couldn't wrap round. So you can make a difference. You can make a difference. You just have to stand up and be counted.
Albert, treason is a criminal offence, right? Of course.
Yes.
So don't you, if you're a member of the public or the citizen, whatever, right, aren't you supposed to report a crime to the police?
Well, you are.
How does the public go about reporting the crime, and then just give us a brief rundown of that process a bit.
About the what?
That process. You know, you report treason is a crime.
Right. Well, right now.
And then you report a crime to the police. You know what I mean? That's
when I first got the documentation, I think like a policeman, and I like simple. So I said to myself, is there a law against it? Yes, there is. There are several. Have those laws been broken? Yes, they have. Who broke them? Well, that lot's standing over there. Whose job is it to fix it? Well, it's a little man with a blue pointed hat on his head's job to fix it. So I printed up all the paperwork. I took it into my local police station, and one of the policemen in there, a sergeant, said to me, sedition is not a crime. So I started his education on the law at that time. Eventually, my local police force threw this out. And so I started then on a number of things. I reported my local police force up to and including the Chief Constable to Thames Valley Police Force, to the Metropolitan Police Force for the criminal offence of compounding treason. I reported that to John Yates. Now, John Yates threw it out. I then reported John Yates to the Chief Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Paul Stevenson, and he threw it out. I've now, because John Yates and Paul Stevenson have actually had to go for, because they're tainted with corruption, really, that's the reason. I've now reported them to the Acting Commissioner, Tim Godwin, and asked him to reopen the inquiry into Thames Valley police officers and the original allegation of treason, and into John Yates and Sir Paul Stevenson for misprision of treason, because they have obviously not been prepared to uphold the law and they are obviously corrupt and are taking money, and therefore they whatever decisions they've made about the treason allegations should be set aside, and the whole thing should be looked at again.
But anyone can do this, can't they, Albert? I mean, any member of the public or citizen, you can do this.
Yeah, well, let me finish. In the meantime, of course, I've been travelling the country and I talk at places. I'm going to do one tomorrow night. And what I say to people there is, I want you to take ownership of a little bit of the fight back. I want you to buy a couple of these CDs off me, which contain all of the information. It'll only cost you £6 for 3 CDs. It's the complete treason reporting package. My contact details are on the CDs, and you can, in fact, come back to me and I'll talk you through it. And what basically happens is they then print the stuff out that's on the papers, they take it in their local police station, and they say, I want to report a crime. And so far, we know from the Police National Computer, because it's on the Police National Computer now, that it's been reported in 70 police stations nationally. And all the police forces it's been reported to are trying to get out of doing anything about it. But in point of fact, we keep the pressure up, and eventually this is a numbers game. If enough people report treason in enough police stations, then the police will have to deal with the treason, because they will not be able to justify not dealing with it. And
the police have got an obligation to investigate the crime that's been reported by a member of the public. Is that right?
But every time they refuse to deal with it, that constitutes another crime, and it constitutes the crime of misprision of treason. And then if they go on and they talk to other officers about it, and collectively they agree not to deal with it, then that becomes compounding treason. And then what I tell people to do is to take the officers from your local police force that you've been dealing with and report them to your next police force over the border for the criminal offence. And the object of the exercise at the end of the day is to get every single police force in the country investigating every other police force in the country for compounding treason. At which point, of course, we're going to find a chief constable somewhere who says, this is very dangerous. I could lose my job. I could lose my pension, and I could spend the rest of my life in prison. Do I really want to do that just to keep Douglas Hurd out of prison?
Wow.
And the answer,
Albert, we are now about at the end of our show. Just give us your website again, where people can look this up and get in contact with you and all your time plans, where they can listen to you.
It's www.acasefortreason.org.uk, and that's my website, and it contains an awful lot of information.
Yeah, so people will look it up. Thank you very much, Albert and Tony and Alin. We are now at the end of the show. I just want, before we break for the end of the show, announce that there will be on next Monday, Flash Crash the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank in the U.S., which is also ruling all over the world. And why don't you search engine this somewhere? And there is a next show going on Monday, and also look it up at globalnoncompliance.com. And they've got a long strike going on a whole week on September 12 to 19. So United We Strike, ICR Radio Networks, and Wake News Radio do thank a lot of our listeners now to listen to us. And thanks a lot to Albert, Tony, Alin, and Brian. And we'll see you at another occasion. Thanks a lot. Now,
thank you.
Thanks a lot, and we'll see each other soon. So
it's a pleasure. And Brian asked us to also say that he was sorry to leave early, and he also thanked you and the listeners as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot also for that information. So we will be back soon.
You're listening to the International Community Radio Network. is Wake News Radio with Detlev on UWS Community Radio and the International Community Radio Network.